say goodbye to the days of boring, pixelated GIFs because Lottie animations are here to bring your designs to life. These are lightweight, scalable, and interactive animations which can be used on all mediums, from websites and apps to ads and social media. In fact, the animations you just saw in this video are Lottie. Hey everyone, my name is Adi, and in this course, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know to get started with Lottie animations. We'll kick things off with a brief history and then explore where to find Lottie animations. From there, we'll dive into various ways of using this new format on the web, but also in Figma prototypes. And finally, I'll show you a few ways you can create your own custom Lottiefiles. So, if that sounds interesting, let's get started. This video is brought to you by Envato Elements, the largest unlimited creative subscription in the world. Click the link in the description to find out more. Lottie is an open source, JSON-based animation file format. It was developed back in 2017 by a group of engineers working for Airbnb. The format is called Lottie because it's named after Charlotte Reiniger, a German pioneer of silhouette animation. Now, there are four main reasons you would want to use Lottie animations. Number one, small file size. Lottie animations are tiny compared to their counterparts. Here's the same animated icon in two formats, GIF on the left and Lottie JSON on the right. The GIF is 1.2 megabytes, while the Lottie is only 329 kilobytes, making it about 70% smaller. And that's just the unoptimized JSON format. More about that in a little bit. Reason number two is that Lottie animations are infinitely scalable. That's because they're vector-based, so you can scale them to any size without losing quality. Reason number three, Lottie animations are interactive. Because the animation elements are exposed, you can manipulate them to respond to interactions like clicking, hovering, or scrolling. Finally, the fourth reason is multi-platform support. Lottie animations can be used pretty much everywhere, the web, iOS, even Android. Now, where can you find these amazing animations? Well, the main source is probably Lottiefiles.com. You can think of this like the official library for Lottie animations. And you'll find tons of information on this website, but you'll also find some free and premium animations, along with a couple of tools that we'll be discussing later in the course. So if you go to free animations, for instance, you can see all the animations created by the community, and some of them, or well, most of them, are actually pretty amazing. And at any point you can click on a specific animation, see its name, who created that animation, and you have a couple of options that we'll talk about later in the course. And of course, if you want some more premium animations, you can find some of those as well. This takes you to the account area on Lottiefiles.com. But here, yeah, you can see some of the premium animations, and you have access to them by subscribing or, by purchasing a plan here on Lottiefiles. There are, of course, other places on the web where you can find Lottie animations. Just do a Google search and I'm sure you'll find a bunch of those. I can also recommend Envato Elements. If you go to Envato Elements and, for instance, you search for Lottie, you'll find over 600 files that come in a Lottie format. These are placed under video templates, and you can find a lot of things from animated illustrations like these to animated icons like these or like these. And you'll actually see me use some of these in this course. So Lottiefiles.com and Envato Elements, these are two places I can recommend for finding great Lottie animations. Now, when it comes to Lottie, at some point you'll come across these three terms: Lottie.json, optimized Lottie.json, and optimized.lottie. So what's the deal with them? Well, it's quite simple. They're all Lottie animations, except some are more optimized than others. In a nutshell, Lottie.json is like the standard format for all Lottie animations, while optimized Lottie.json and .lottie are optimized versions designed to improve page loading times and performance, with .lottie offering additional features and optimizations. To give you an idea about what that means, take a look at this loader animation from Lottiefiles.com. The standard format is 113 kilobytes in size. The optimized JSON is 82 kilobytes, so 26% smaller, while the .lottie format is just 7 kilobytes, so 93% smaller. Apart from the obvious difference in file size, there are also slight differences when it comes to implementation, which we'll discuss in the next lesson. And speaking of that, let's move on to using Lottie animations. All right, so let's take a look at a few demos that will show you how to implement these Lottie animations in your projects. And we'll start with the web. For our first demo, I have this page that I'm building right here, and I want a cool travel-related animation that goes right here in the hero area above my main title. So I went to Lottiefiles.com, I searched for travel, and I found this one that's called Travel is Fun. So let's see how we can implement this in that page. The first thing you got to do is create an account. Then once you created the account and you're logged in, you would click the download button and you would say save to workspace to download. Okay, and that's going to open that animation in your workspace. And this is a place on Lottiefiles.com where you can edit the animation. For example, you can go and change the background color here. You can even change the color palette of the animation, right? So maybe you want something like this, or like this, or like this, or like this. It's really up to you. Or you can just reset and use the default options. There are many more things to play around with here, but the stuff that we're interested in is how do we take this animation and put it in our web page. For that, the easiest way by far is if you go to the handoff and embed section, you can enable the asset link. This is mandatory if you want to embed this animation in your page. And once that's activated, you can choose the format that you want to link to. So you can choose between Lottie.json, optimized, Lottie.json, .lottie, and optimized. And you can see the size difference for these elements here. Obviously, we want to go for the smallest file size possible. So let's go for optimized.lottie. And then all you got to do is copy this code from here and pasting it in your page. Let's open up VS Code. This is where I have the code for the page. And instead of animation goes here, I can simply do this. Now, this has two parts. We have a script that basically loads the .lottie player from an external repository. And then we're creating a .lottie player custom HTML element that's linking to our animation. And by using these attributes here, we can change the animation background, the speed, the size of it. And we can also specify whether or not to loop the animation. So play it over and over again. And should it autoplay or not on page load. So I'm just going to leave this by default, save, and then I'm going to go back to my page. And just like that, I have an animation playing exactly where I want it. Do I want to make it bigger? Sure. I can change this, let's say, to 640 pixels. You know, you can leave in the height if you want to. I'm going to delete that. And maybe that's a little bit too big, so maybe go with 480 pixels, just like that. So I'm quite happy with that result. And that's it. That's super, super easy. Now, if you want to make changes to this animation, you can go in here, you can maybe change the color palette, and you can save that, right? You can save the changes to this animation that you're linking to, but you would need a premium account for that. Or you can save it as a new animation and then link it again in your page here. So that's the easiest way you can embed a Lottie animation in a web page. Now for demo number 2, we're looking at a very simple page where I want to add some icons above these feature titles. Okay, so I went to Envato Elements and I got this animated icon set, which includes icons in a Lottie format. If you want to check this out, you'll find a link in the video description. And I got 3 of the icons, and I'll just show them to you really quick. This is called communication, security, and transfer. Obviously, these are JSON formats, so we cannot preview them in VS Code, but you will see them live in just a little bit. So let's see how we can load these in our web page. Obviously, these are not from Lottiefiles.com, so we cannot embed them like we did in the previous example. So for that, if we're getting icons from somewhere else, we can use a JS library called body movin. This is just like the After Effects plugin used to create Lottie animations in the first place. But yeah, you can go to cdnjs.com/library/bodymovin. You can grab this script tag from here. You can paste it, let's say, just before the end of the body tag, like so. And then you would write a script yourself that looks something like this. You would create a variable. You can call it whatever you want. And you'll say Lottie.loadAnimation. And you would pass in a couple of parameters. First of all, the container. So where do you want to place that animation? In my case, it's a div with an ID of icon1. So we're going to say document, get element by ID, icon1. Then you would specify the renderer. So render as what exactly? On the canvas, in the HTML, as SVG. Personally, I'm going to go for SVG. Do you want it to loop or not? I'm going to set loop to true. I also want this to autoplay on page load. And finally, you can specify a path. So where are you loading the icon from? Mine is in a folder called images / and I'm going to load transfers.json, which is this one right here. So we save that. And now when we go back to our page, we can see the icon really nicely there. It's already animated. It looks great because I added some CSS beforehand where I just set a width and a height to the icon class. Pretty easy, right? So now I can create the other 2 icons. So animations 2 and 3. Let's target the corresponding elements in the DOM. This is going to be communication and this is going to be security. So my other 2 icons. And that's it. And that's how easy it is to load these Lottie animations in a web page. Now, doing it this way gives you a lot of control because later on, you can target this anim1 or anim2 object and do all sorts of stuff with it. You can play the animation, you can pause the animation. You basically have access to the entire Lottie animation, and you can do some crazy stuff with it. So you definitely have more control by doing this than the previous version where you just embedded the animations from Lottiefiles.com. Now, if you don't want to write any kind of JavaScript, there is another way, although it doesn't give you the same amount of control. You can add the Lottie class to the container where you want to load each icon. And then you would set some custom data attributes. You don't actually need the IDs for this approach, but I'm going to leave them in anyway. So you would set data animation path. That's going to be equal to images slash, what was it? The first one, transfers.json. And then you would do the same for the other two. This one is communication, and this one is security. Great, save. And there we have it. Same thing, just a different way of loading these animations. As I said, this doesn't give you the same amount of control, but if you don't want to write JavaScript, then you have this option. There are also two data attributes that you can add here. One is for loop and one is for autoplay, if I'm not mistaken. But in a nutshell, this is how you would load those Lottie icons or whatever animation you have by using the body moving JavaScript plugin. Now, if you're a Webflow user, then you'll be super happy to hear that Webflow supports Lottie animations by default. So you don't need to add any kind of external libraries. They just work. So let me show you a quick demo of that. So I recreated the page you just saw here in Webflow. And I want to do the same thing, add those Lottie animations right here above the heading 3s. So how do we do that? Well, I've already loaded those assets right here, the JSON files, and all I got to do is click and drag, and I want to make sure that these are set to loop, so they keep going and going. And let's do the same for the other one. I believe it was the communications. Like so, make that loop as well. And I'm also going to choose SVG as the render here. And then the, oops, I didn't mean to do that, just this one. Bring that in. Of course, it's much faster to do this in Webflow because it's an amazing tool. So let's just select one of these and change its size to maybe 128 pixels. So we can actually give it a class. Let's call this custom Lottie, and let's apply it to the other Lottie animations as well, like so. So now when we preview the page, you'll see the animations are nicely playing. They're scalable. They're very crisp. And as I said, you don't need to load any kind of external libraries in Webflow because it's already got that covered for you. Now, before we wrap up this lesson, I want to quickly go over some of the Lottie integrations you might not expect. So if you go to the Lottiefiles.com/integrations page, you'll see all of the available plugins and all of the available places where you can add Lottie files. And you saw one just here as I scroll down, there is a Canva plugin. So if you're a Canva user, you can add free, ready-to-use Lottie animation in your Canva projects. And as you scroll down, you'll find all the places where you can embed and implement these Lottie animations. For example, you can add them to Figma. I just mentioned the Canva. You can even add them in Apple Vision Pro projects, right? Apple Vision Pro, in case you don't know, it's that VR headset from Apple. You can add them to Framer, to Wix, to Sketch even. You can embed them even in productivity tools like Notion. And also if you're using no-code tools like Webflow, I just showed you how to use them, but you can also add Lottie animations to WordPress and even to Elementor. So a lot of different options. Go ahead and study this page to find out exactly where you can implement these Lottie animations. Now, if you browsed the integration list that I just showed you, you might have seen Figma, Sketch, and some other design tools being featured there. Well, as a longtime Figma user, I'm super happy that we can include Lottie animations in Figma prototypes. So let me give you a quick sneak peek of that. So in Figma, I have the same page that I showed you earlier, and let's say I want to add those three icons, right? Well, by default, Figma doesn't support the JSON format, right? So we need to use a plugin for that. And the easiest one to use is just the Lottiefiles plugin. So you need to open that and you go to import. So I'm going to select these 3 JSON files. And while we cannot add the JSON file as a Lottie animation, we can insert it as a GIF. So let's do that. You can choose the size. In my case, let's do small. Make sure transparency checked. And then I'm going to insert the GIF. Okay, so I'm going to take that and just place it wherever I need right here. And then we can do the same for the other icons. Apparently, you can just do one at a time. So let's do security. Let's insert that as a GIF as well. Let's place it there. And let's do one more time. Let's do communication. Insert that as a GIF. Okay, take that. Now you can close the plugin. And if you go to the prototype, you will see that the animations are now loaded as animated GIFs. I'm sure that in a future Figma update, we'll be able to include JSON Lottie animations, which are obviously much better than GIF files because they're scalable, you can interact with them. But for now, you can load Lottie animations in Figma prototypes. You just need to convert them to a GIF first. All right, and these are just a few ways you can integrate Lottie animations in your project. Now, covering every single use case for this is obviously beyond the scope of this course, so I'll leave that up to your individual needs. The integration page I showed you earlier should give you all the necessary information. With that said, let's move on to the fourth and final lesson of this course, where I'll show you how to create custom Lottie animations. You know, design adventures can be tricky, especially when you're on the hunt for device mockups, icons, and whatnot. So if you're looking for a place where you can find this stuff really easy, I recommend Envato Elements. Recently, I was working on a website design, and this feature section needed to show an image of the client's app. And it's a Mac app, so I wanted to present it in a special, meaningful way. So I found this Apple Pro Display mockup on Envato Elements. After importing it to Figma, I changed the image, then copied the whole thing in my project, adjusted the size and positioning, and I was done. Very simple, very fast. So check out Envato Elements for all sorts of digital assets. You need one subscription or unlimited downloads. For more info, check out the links in the video description. Now, let's face it, at some point you'll want to design and create your own custom animations. Maybe, you have a client that has a very specific request, or you just can't find the right animation for your project. Well, there are several ways you can create custom Lottie animations, so let me show you a couple of them. Traditionally, Lottie animations are created in Adobe After Effects. That's how it all started. After the animation is created in After Effects, it's exported to JSON using a free plugin called Body Movin. You've heard about it in a previous lesson where we used the JavaScript plugin called Body Movin to load those JSON, those Lottie icons in our web page. Now, I'm not going to show you that because I don't know how to work in After Effects, so I'll leave it up to the pros. Plus, Adobe After Effects is a paid software, so not everyone has access to it. Therefore, let's look at other ways we can create custom Lottie animations. Let's say I found this icon set on Envato Elements, and I want to use one of these icons in a project, and I want to animate it, right? So I downloaded this, and in Figma, I copied this map icon, which looks something like this. Now, the easiest way to create a Lottie animation out of this static file is to use the Lottiefiles plugin. So let's open that up. So you would select the icon frame, and then you would simply export to Lottie. And here you have several different options. You can choose from some presets like this, which will animate all of the layers inside the parent frame. So you can rotate them, you can pulse them like this. You can do a path drawing like so. You also have some options here like sliding up or sliding down, fading in. But I think probably something like this would work for me, or maybe this one. I think this one would do just fine. And inside the Figma plugin, you also have some customization options. You can choose how many frames you want this to animate over, which basically gives you the duration of the animation. You can do a start delay, an end delay. For example, if I put 10 here, it's gonna use 10 frames as a delay for start, 25 for the end here. And you can choose how you want to animate each individual layer. So sequential, meaning one after the other, or parallel, which animates them all at the same time. Obviously, the results are quite different. So once you're done, creating your animation like this, you can either create a GIF file out of it, or you can save it to your workspace on Lottiefiles.com. And from there, you can implement it wherever you like. Now, this is the easiest way to create a Lottie animation in Figma, but there are other ways as well. So let's quickly close this. Let's say I want a little bit more manual control over how my animation would look like. So I can actually create the individual stages of the animation. So here's how you do that. Let's actually duplicate this frame 2 times, and let's make some changes to the middle frame, right? Let's move these elements around, maybe rotate this a little bit, maybe why not make it a little bit bigger like so, and maybe move this icon down. What else can we do? We can, make this a little bit bigger, move this down, make this a little bit smaller, maybe make this a little bit bigger. So the idea is we make whatever changes we want to the intermediate stages of the animation. So once I'm happy with the changes, I can go to, well, maybe just a few more for good measure. Once I'm happy, I can go to prototype. Yeah, I can create a flow starting point for our prototype. And then I can start adding interactions, right? So I want this to start right away. So let's add a 1 millisecond delay. And I want to navigate to the second frame. And I want, this is important, I want to animate them over Smart Animate. And let's do like a 1 second animation duration. So let's do the same for frame 2. Yeah, we go to frame 3. Again, with Smart Animate, the exact same thing. So now if we preview this, it looks something like this, right? And then from frame 3, we can, circle back to frame 1 and do exactly the same thing, which looks something like this. Of course, it just keeps on going back and forth. So with the prototype created, let's open up the plugin. And here, instead of selecting the frames that you want to animate, you can select the prototype flow. And you can see the animation preview right here in the plugin. And after this, you can either insert it as a GIF or save it to your workspace in Lottiefiles. And from there, you can do whatever you want with it. You can embed it in your web project. You can use it in your iOS app, your Android app, whatever you want. But those are 2 ways you can create a Lottie animation using the Lottiefiles Figma plugin. Now, you might be familiar with SVGator. That's an online tool you can use to animate SVGs. And recently, they introduced support for Lottie animations, which means you can import but also export Lottie files. Let me show you a quick demo. So you would go to svgator.com, you would create an account, and that's gonna take you to their app. So let me actually open one of their demo projects here and show you what it's all about. You can basically create all sorts of shapes within here. You can also import Lottiefiles. If you go to library, right, you can upload assets, but you would have to upgrade to a paid plan. In my case, I'm just going to use this demo to demonstrate, which currently looks something like this, right? It morphs these two shapes, basically, the outer shape and the inner shape, and it also changes the color of the outer shape. And it's pretty self-explanatory here. We have the morphing shape, which is the middle one, and I'm creating an animation for morph. And then I have the ellipse, which is the outer shape. I'm changing the morph, or I'm animating the morph and the fill color. And if I want to animate something else, let's say I want to add a border to this ellipse, right? I can go in here to the right side in the panel here, and I can add a stroke. Let's say I want to add a red stroke just so we can see it. And let's make that a little bit more obvious, something like that. I meant to do it here, like so. Okay, so let's place the cursor to the beginning, and let's click on animate here, and I'm going to animate the stroke color. Okay, that created a keyframe. So now let's move our playhead here where we want to create the next keyframe in the animation. And here, let's set the stroke color to, let's say, that blue. And finally, let's move it all the way to the end. And let's add another keyframe where I'm going to change this to maybe, I don't know, this orange. Okay. So now if we play it back, you'll see that stroke color also change along with the other stuff. And of course, once you're happy with the animation, you can go to export, where you have the usual options, but now in beta, so be careful, this is a beta option, you can download as Lottie.json. And if you're on a paid plan with SVGator, you can also choose to download an optimized JSON file. But take this with a grain of salt. As I said, this is a beta, so it might not work as expected. The import might not work as expected at the time of this recording. Maybe if you're watching this a year later, everything is fine and dandy. But for now, just be cautious. So that's SVGator. Last but not least, Lottie animations can be created with some of the tools available at Lottiefiles.com. So let me show you two of those. The first one is called SVG to Lottie, and you can find it under Integrations, SVG to Lottie. Basically, what this allows you to do is upload an SVG file and then animate it. So I'm going to be animating this moose logo from Envato Elements. I have that as an SVG, so I'm simply going to drag and drop it here. And from here, you just select one of these presets. Right. Personally, I'm a big fan of this one that draws the shape. So you can go with this or maybe this. But I think this one is the right one for me. So once I'm happy with the result, I just save it to the workspace. And from there, yeah, I can, download it as a JSON file. I can change its color palette, do all sorts of things from the Lottiefiles app. So that's the first tool, SVG to Lottie. Very, very handy if you want something really quick. And if you're happy with one of these presets, then go for it. Now, if you want something a little bit more capable, then you would go to Lottie Creator. And for that, you would go to Products, Lottie Creator, and you would launch it. Just a word of caution first, this is also in beta at the time of this recording, so not all features might work as expected. For instance, this Lottie Creator has a cool feature called AI prompt to vector, which currently doesn't work. But it's something really cool. You just enter a prompt like you would do in ChatGPT or Midjourney, and it's going to generate a vector for you. And then you can do whatever you want with that vector. But the nice thing about Lottie Creator is it gives you, if you go to the Discover tab, it gives you some pre-made animations that you can use and build your own. So for example, I can choose this simple thumbnail and I can preview it like so. Okay, you can change the duration of the animation. Let's say I want this to be like 3 seconds, maybe 60 FPS. You can also change the dimension of the canvas this is running on. And if you want to add something extra, you can search for animations. Let's say, let's search for sparkle, and you can add a sparkle effect. You can preview it here, and you can add it to your animation here, and you can preview it. And you can, move it. Let's say you want the sparkle to come in right about here, right? You can change its position. And if you want, you can edit that separately by going to the animation tab, and you can play around with these. You can maybe take some of these and delete them all together. It's really up to you how you control this animation. And as I said, it's still in beta, so some of these features might not work as they should. But maybe by the time you see this video, it's all of the problems might be fixed. And you can even create certain elements yourself, right? You have an option here for shape tools where you can create a rectangle, ellipse, polygon, stars, and you can animate those however you want. So you can add a rectangle here, right? You can change its appearance here, its color, its size, and then you can click on these and animate its various properties like the position, scale, opacity, and so on and so forth. The idea is once you are happy with your animation, you would go to export, and that's gonna create it in your workspace where you can save it, you can give it a name, and from the workspace, well, by now you should know what to do with it. And that's a quick introduction to Lottie animations. I hope you found this video useful, and I have a question for you. How are you planning on using Lottie animations in your projects? Is it an animated illustration, icon, logo? Let us know down in the comments. As always, don't forget to check out the Envato Tuts Plus YouTube channel for more content like this, but also to learn about web design, web development, and much more. It's all free, so make sure to also hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. I'm Adi, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, take care.